Hi everybody, it's Rhonda Birchmore here and welcome back to Rhonda's Rewind, the series where I share with you some of my most favorite career highlights, stories and secrets right here on YouTube. On today's episode, I will be discussing the London revival of Stop the World, I Wanna Get Off, the musical that I would star opposite the legendary Anthony Newley in. Now let me start by telling you a little bit about Anthony Newley. He was a massive recording star in the 60s and the 70s. He was an English actor. He was an incredible songwriter. With his partner in songwriting, Leslie Bricusse, they would turn out so many incredible songs. Feeling Good, Goldfinger, Pure Imagination, the score for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and of course, my favorite, What Kind of Fool Am I? Now, let me explain to you a little bit about Stop the World, I Wanna Get Off. It was a massive hit in the late 60s in London. And of course, Tony Newley wrote it and with Leslie Bricusse and starred as the main character, Little Chap. Then the show would go over to Broadway and the great Sammy Davis Jr. would play that role. Little Chap was a very cocky little Englishman. He was quite the chauvinistic, misogynistic character. The producers were auditioning people in London and they couldn't find who they wanted exactly. And one of the producers recalled my performance in Sugar Babies and they thought, oh, we'll get on the phone to her, only to find out that I lived in Australia. So I had to fly to Los Angeles to meet and audition for Tony Newley. And the deal was if I got the role, I would be reimbursed. Otherwise, it'd be money kind of down the gurgler. I walked in and, oh my gosh, the pressure. It was a 2-hour audition. I had to play everything from an English to a German to a Russian to an American. But I mean, the chemistry between Tony and myself was instant. He was the most charming, charismatic man. Anyway, I did that audition and then I just had to sit tight and then finally got the phone call that I got the role. I was so excited. Now, about 4 months later, I packed my bags and I was heading back to London's West End. We had this big press kind of conference. It was very, very exciting. All the newspapers were there and the BBC and it was all going on. I remember the next day opening the paper, the front page of the Evening Standard had Anthony Newley with his co-star from Down Under, Rhoda Brickmore. Now, it sounded like a truck driver. How could they get Rhoda Brickmore from Rhonda Birchmore? But anyway, so that was the start of it. Now here's the press launch with Tony Newley explaining his role and mine in Stop the World.
By and large, it's a parable about, for all time, I mean, it's about a little cocky little fellow who makes his way up into the upper reaches of English aristocracy by the usual means, lying and cheating and stealing. And he's besotted with women. He's surrounded with women. And there's this wonderful totem figure, Rhonda Birchmore, who plays all the women in his life.
Now, in the show, I had 2 daughters, and they were Denise Van Outen and Martine McCutcheon, who would both go on to become huge stars. I mean, Martine, you would know her from Love Actually, Denise, her own shows, and a lineup of the ensemble were incredible, including Friends Today, Kim Ismay and Dolly Henry, a wonderful bevy of fabulous women. Now, we would do an out-of-town tryout in Bromley. The promise was that it was a revival, it was going to be refreshed, but just the nature of the piece, so much of it was politically incorrect. That was the thing that I don't think that was really thought through to bring it into the late 80s. There was a feeling of uneasiness and just lack of direction. We were all feeling. I did a German character, and that was cut before we got into London's West End. I mean, the audiences in Bromley loved it and it was reviewed okay, but I knew even in my gut of guts we needed quite a bit of polishing before we opened. Now, I would play all the loves and affairs of little chap's life. I would play Evie, his longtime love that he would marry and have children with. I would play Anya, the Russian. I would play Loreen, the American. But one of my favorites, of course, was Evie. Here is Typically English.
My mother said I never should play with the young men in the wood. If I did, she would say, naughty little girl to disobey.
Your mother's quite right. Remember what happened to Red Riding Hood?
I'm a typically English rosebud, born of typically English stock, with a typically Anglo-Saxon family tree.
You can tell, can't you?
I received my education in a typically English way at a typically English girls' academy.
I went to Brixton Boys School
I
myself.
played typically English tennis at a typically English club with a typically English feeling for their play. You boys, I eat typically English crumpets with my typically English tea at the end of every typically English day. Do you like crumpets?
Do I like crumpet?
Father is a typically English kind of. Home is a typically English county town. Mommy and I play typically English patience while the typically English rain is pouring down. We've a typically English bulldog who likes typically English walks past the typically English trees upon the hill. Naughty Lancelot! I'm so sorry!
Oh, that's all right. I'm glad you don't walk your horse.
And if anyone asks me how I like this typically English life, I am fed up to my typically English tea.
My mother said I never should play with the girlies in the wood. If I did, she would say they'll only end up in the family way.
When I go to typically English dances, Mommy gives me typically some advice. How to cope with typically coarse advances, though I've got to confess I find them rather nice. Stay there in the typically English summer. We take typically English homes to a typically seaside place with Aunt and Maud. Oh, and if anyone asks me how I like this typically English life, I have never ever been so bloody bored. And if anyone asks me how I like this typically English life, I have never been.
The next character would be Anya. I can't even listen to this. Anya was a Russian, and oh my gosh, I had great fun playing this very, very butch. She was like a truck driver. That was Rhoda Brickmore. And one of my favorites was Loreen. She was an American glamour businesswoman. I used to love doing this song, you know, all American. Mind you, it was very clever, the writing, because it was the same melody as typically English, but of course adapted to the Russian, to the American. And this is one when all the big brass came in and the top came off and a bit of old, Rhonda. Yeah, it was great.
I love you, Loreen.
My mother said, don't screw around. Based on experience, I have found if I did, she would say, you'll only be sorry on Labor Day. selling all American dreams. They're the kind Horatio Alger said come true. I'm the glittering example of democracy at work. I'm an all-American Irish Swedish Jew. Executive success, from stenographer to corporate lady whiz. Anybody can be a president of these great United States, and to prove it, almost anybody is. Daddy couldn't utter a word of English, yet he became the mightiest billionaire. Daddy bought me this nose job and these brand new boobs, while Mama tightened up her derriere. There's only one thing missing in my all-American dream. That's a man who make our marriage his career. He would learn to cook and clean for me and drive me home from work in an all-American car that lasts a year. Since first I went to college, all the fellas fell for me. The football players voted me this touchdown 83. I took 70 passes and the whole team scored with me. Now here comes the Loreen. I'm as clean as Chloe, living as Loreen. That's
Well, we would open at the Lyric Theatre in Shaftesbury Avenue, and it was a fantastic opening night, and it was, the who's who of everyone. Joan Collins was there, Sir John Mills, and I remember my parents had flown in from Australia. But a couple of days later, the reviews started coming out, and they were far from kind. They absolutely savaged Tony Newley. I remember some of the headlines: "Stab that man, I want to nod off. Stop the show, I want to go home." But thankfully, I got out of it unscathed. They really liked me. You know, I look back and this video footage that you're seeing for the first time, I'm seeing for the first time 31 years later, I thought his performance was incredible. I just think the problem was the piece was dated, and the press had their field day. Showbiz. Even though the show didn't run as long as, we all thought it would, to have the opportunity to work with the late, great Tony Newley, oh my goodness. It was definitely one of the highlights of my career. One of my most favorite memories of seeing anyone perform was to watch him every night, side stage, sing "What Kind of Fool Am I?"
Why can't I cast away this mask of play and live my life? Why can't I love till I don't give and maybe then
Tony Newley, I love you to bits. To see this video after 31 years, it makes my heart very, very full and very nostalgic. This was one of my favorite duets we used to do together. Someone Nice Like You.
And if we could live twice, I'd make life paradise. for someone
I don't know what I did. That was a funny one at the end.
Just when you thought it was safe, look what I've also unearthed. What kind of fool am I who never fell in love? Of course I've got my own Anthony Newley puppet, don't you? Oh my goodness, how did I do? He said subscribe now. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed presenting it. If you did, I want you to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to keep more of Rhonda's Rewind coming. And if you want to hear a few more stories, including bits about Joan Collins, you can get a copy of Legs 11 by going to rhondabirchmore.com, and I will sign one for you and send one out. Till next time, bye!